Hey everybody, I'm Anna McEwen. And now for Bob Switzer with the epic narrative.
All right, we finished the whole book. Look at us go. We are just cruising through season 4. Welcome back to the epic narrative, everyone. We are always happy to have you here. We're in the book of Numbers. What is the book of Numbers? Well, it's about people and the numbers of them. It starts out with the census, and that's kind of it. There's reasons for it all. There is, and it's kind of it's going to start forming the idea that we are a nation, and I think it's an interesting thing. Like when you have yourself counted in a tribe or in a family and a tribe and then a group of tribes and then the nation, and all of those numbers come into play, then you start to feel connected. It's like, all right, we are one. Now, this is something that slaves, were they connected? Slaves were connected, yes. But what were they connected through? They were connected through shared crisis, shared negative experiences, shared lack of freedom and control. Not lack of control, being controlled. Sorry. All that's part of their shared experiences. So they do feel connected in that part, but as slavery really brings, as we've discussed, I think pretty extensively in the last couple seasons, slavery brings with it a mentality of individual survival. You take care of you first. You take care of you get what you can for you. You make sure the master's happy with you. If you have to throw somebody else under the bus in order to, stay connected and have the master not punish you, then you throw the other person under the bus. Slavery doesn't bring with it a strong sense of communal connection. And it's designed that way. And there's stories of many different cultures where slavery is a thing, where they work together to keep the slaves from uniting. Famous movies are about it. I mean, you could go to the cartoons. Was it Ants? I think it was Ants, right? Where the grasshoppers are the bad guys and the ants are the good guys, but there's way more ants than than grasshoppers, and the grasshoppers take all the food from the ants because they don't want to do all their own harvest. Are these spoiler alerts? Should I be telling people? It's old. Bob says it's old enough. Thank you, Engineer Bob, coming through here, covering for me. Anyways, there's a famous line in there where the leader of the grasshoppers is like, if they ever figure out that there's way more of them than us, then basically we're doomed. Because we don't collect food. We need their food to survive. And I think we see stories of that. There's just a lot of stories. I was thinking of going through some. Who was that one blonde queen from Game of Thrones that freed all the slaves, the Sullys? That she freed the Sullys. She was not a Tigerian. Anyways, doesn't matter. There's some Game of Thrones people that are like, no, you're talking about this girl. Good. Glad you know what I'm talking about. Anyways, freeing slaves is always an interesting whole concept, because getting them free is very, very difficult, because they're not designed by their culture to really work together. Now, the Hebrews had a unique culture because they kept giving up freedoms in order to maintain their lifestyles, maintain their property, maintain their homes, and eventually they were, in essence, wards of the state. They were controlled by the state. They couldn't do anything unless the Egyptian government, told them they could do it, and they had to do whatever the Egyptian government had told them to do, because they were dependent on the Egyptian government for everything. And we've gone into how the ramifications of all of that. So now they're out on their own. Now we've got the law of God presented, right? We talked about that last season. And God's like, all right, here are all the principles of working together and loving each other and loving God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And yes, we have a sacrificial system, but it's not the end all of all things. It's just a way for us to start to connect, because clearly that concept of a God who wants to talk to you is not something that you are used to. And I am a God of love, and I will do what I can, whatever it takes in order to maintain connection to you. So here we go. We're going to number you so that everybody knows that we are all one nation. It's just one of the ways that I think we start breaking down the slavery mentality. So the Lord's, we're in chapter 1, verse 1. The Lord spoke to Moses at the tent of the meeting in the desert of Sinai on the first day of the second month of the second year after the Israelites came out of Egypt. And there are people who know exactly what day that is, and God bless them. I did not look it up. Take a census of all the Israelites' communities by clans, by families, listing every man by name one by one. You and Aaron are to count according to their divisions all the men of Israel who are 20 years old or more and able to serve in the army. Now, for what that's worth, most people will agree that you could serve in the army up to age 60. So this is a census of men ages 20 to 60. One man from each tribe, each of them head of the family, is to help you. So there was lots of help, and they list off all the names of the people that were going to help from the various tribes that they came from. These were the men that were appointed as from the community, the leaders of their ancestral tribes. They were the heads of the clans of Israel. Now, you would think, sometimes by reading that, you think God told them the name of the heads of the tribes, but really that came from the tribes. They decided who that was, and they sent them to Moses and Aaron to help with the census, and they all did this as a community. Now, what else did the counting one another do? Right? It got you national elders. It got you a good idea of who could serve in the army. You got a pretty good concept of who could help with the division of land, right? We know that eventually we're going to be going into the promised land. And when we get in there and we start to expand and we start to spread ourselves out, we want to spread out accordingly to the tribes so that people are not wrestling and arguing over various parcels or whatever. We want to give regions out. We want to know how many and where they're going, all that sort of thing. It also is going to come into play, as we talked about in the last book about the year of Jubilee. It's going to be important that the tribes know who's who and who's connected and who's related to whom, and how where all that got together is here in the book of Numbers when all this was counted, so that when the land is divided and then the year of Jubilee comes along, if land has been sold or the person sold themselves and then sold the land, whatever those ramifications are, at the year of Jubilee, they're going to get that land back. Well, you have to be able to be connected to the tribe and to that land. And if you can't claim it, then you don't get to keep it. You don't get it back. So this numbers thing was really important. Again, slaves generally, a slave mentality doesn't keep track of their heritage because all they're trying to do is survive. They don't really care if they have, land. They don't have land. They don't care if anybody who's going to get what. What heritage am I leaving behind? We're all just slaves. We're all just being overseen and controlled by the government. I mean, at this point, Egypt is, back in the day, they're not there now. Anyways, okay. You know what I'm trying to say. The other thing that we read, not here, but we read in oral traditions, is that for every man, 20 to 60, they had to bring a half shekel to the treasury. Now, the half shekel is virtually, it's like a penny. It's really not a big deal. But it was an acknowledgement. Like everyone could afford the half shekel. Everyone could get this. And so they were all to bring it. Now, the people who didn't bring it, we're going to scroll down. I'm scrolling down my phone. Sorry. I don't know. You can turn the page if you need to. if you're reading along, verse 47, we see what's happening here. Well, we'll read 45. All the Israelites 20 years or more were able to serve in the army, were counted according to their family. The total number was 603,550 people. And so people double that pretty easily, saying at least, there's got to be that many younger than 20 and older than 20. So we're talking over 1 million. Then you throw in the women, which easily could be another 1 million. Like you're talking several million people here. And that's where a lot of people get their numbers, hence from the book of Numbers. And there are some who completely discount that. They have their own argument and traditional approach to numbers and how they're translated, et cetera, et cetera. And you can argue numbers all day long. Trust me. Go to any bookkeeper and start asking them. Or bank. Oh, or statistician. Holy smokes, can they argue numbers? Anyways, on to verse 47. The ancestral tribe of the Levites, however, was now not counted among the others. You see, the Levites were set apart for God. So they weren't counted in the census because they weren't given land. Their inheritance was the tabernacle. Their inheritance, in essence, was God and his word and the system that they had to help maintain. Their inheritance was to travel around the nation, i.e., various tribes and families, and teach them about God. When they weren't working in the tabernacle, they were out teaching. Like this was their role. Now they did have flocks. People could dedicate their. We talked about I think that last book. People could dedicate animals and that sort of thing to the Levites, or the Levites would in essence then take care of them. Those animals were never supposed to be used for sacrifice, but they did have flocks to take care of, but they were not given land. They were not given a place that would be counted as far as this goes. Part of their job was to guard and care for the tabernacle. So when they would encamp, they literally would encamp all around the tabernacle. They did not have a section of in the other 11 tribes. They were all divided up and various based on north, south, east, and west, and all that kind of thing. We'll get into that in a minute, but they were not given that. They just went around it. They camped around the tabernacle. Of course, this was practical. They could always be called up on duty if there was a lot to do, and if the pillar of fire or cloud moved, then they could move too. They could move quickly. They were the only ones that were supposed to touch the tabernacle, and everybody had a specific job to do. And I would imagine by the third or fourth time they put it up, it was like watching a well-oiled machine. People knew exactly where to go. Their timing was perfect. And that thing probably, despite its size, probably went up, I'm thinking within an hour of arrival. And then to tear it down. Now I've currently, as at the time of this recording, right, I'm still living in an RV, and we are parked for at least 6 months here in Florida as we work. We do some work camping down here, but like if we had to leave, and we talked about it because of hurricane season down here, it's like if we had to leave and pack up, it takes a while, but we know what we're supposed to do. Now, we got really good at it when we were traveling a lot with our house. We put on almost 30,000 miles traveling the country, and there were times we went, we'd set up for a day and pack up and leave the next day, and set up for a day. That was kind of crazy. We learned not to do that after a while, but even if we stayed 3-4 days, then boom, we'd pack up and leave. We got really quick at it. We could set it up. Once it was parked, and I and my wife got out, and it was like, all right, we're gonna, we could disconnect, and in essence be seated and in our house, air conditioner running, and we're just kind of chilling for a minute. We could do that in less than 20 minutes, just that fast. Water, sewer, electrical, what we call slide outs, just everything, less than 20 minutes. And we could do the same thing when packing. Now it takes a little bit. It's a little different because you do have to. My wife did have to clean. You have to clean the floors really good, because when the slide outs come in, they are powerful hydraulics. And if you have anything on the floor, little piece of dirt or rock, that hydraulic slide comes over the top of it, it'll tear your floor up. So, anyways, there's things to do, but again, we could do it. If we really wanted to, we could get out in 20 minutes. So I would imagine the same sort of thing happens with the tabernacle when these Levites, once they knew their jobs and they all were camped around it, and the pillar of fire started to move one night, or the pillar of cloud started to move one day, they could shut that thing down, clean that thing up, have it packed up and on the carts and ready to go. Probably as fast as most people could get their own houses ready. And then, of course, they also had to get their own houses ready. They had to get their own tents tore down, wrapped up. And I assume their children had some work, plenty of work to do, and their wives, and they helped each other and all that sort of thing. So it had to be an amazingly beautiful, very almost, I'm sure you'd look at it and think it's chaos, but you know what's that phrase in the Bible where it says decently and in order? All things should be done decently in order. And of course, a lot of preachers use that phrase to manipulate Sunday morning services into very specific, unadjustable, organized programming. That's not what that phrase means. It literally means the atmosphere around giving birth, which is rather chaotic. I mean, everything's going to happen. If the baby comes out, like, there's no stopping that, right? That's one thing you learn if you've ever been in a birthing room. There's no stopping it once it happens. Those contractions stop. You can argue all you want. It's not gonna stop. But there's chaos. There's blood. There's other liquids. There's people. There's screaming sometimes. There's crying. There's laughter. There's sweat. There's all kinds of stuff going on. It could look chaotic, but trust me, everything's going along just fine, just the way it's supposed to go. And I imagine that's very similar to the way that both the setup and the teardown of the tabernacle went. Verse 51. I want to jump down to there. You must instead appoint the Levites to be in charge of the tabernacle, covenant law, all its furnishings. 51. There it is. Whenever the tabernacle is to move, the Levites are to take it down. Whenever the tabernacle is to be set up, the Levites shall do it. Anyone who approaches it is to be put to death. So I want to, of course, stop there for a minute, because in the epic narrative, we see things like that and we say, whoa, who's killing what you... If anybody else approaches the tabernacle when it's being tore down and picked up, they're going to die. And again, that's an English translation. So we have to go back to its original intent and culture of the day. And that word put to death was basically, if God wants to, he could kill you for this. It's kind of like, well, it's an almost casual approach. It's like, listen, I don't know what's going to happen. God might kill you for it. I don't know. And that sounds harsh. But what Moses is saying is, I don't know if it's a sin. I don't know if it's a death penalty. I don't know if you just don't touch it. I don't know what could happen. If God wanted to, he could kill you for it, I guess. Like, whatever. Just don't touch it. Let the Levites take care of it. That's all you need to know. So in chapter 2, this is where I told you we get to it. All the tribes are divided. So the 3 tribes are under one banner on 4 sides of the tabernacle. 3 tribes. So you got 3, 6, 9, 12. But actually the Levites, right, they're all around the tabernacle. So you got 3 tribes under the banner, 4 sides of the tabernacle. Now, each tribe had its own colors and banner. So each tribe. And then the 3 tribes would work together, and they'd put together their own banner that represented their area. So when the cloud would park and the Levites would drop everything and start building the tabernacle right underneath the cloud, right? Then everybody would follow their banner, both as a group. Oh, that's our group of 3. And then they would find their families. Oh, that's our tribe over there. This is where we are. And the distance of the furthest tribe down the row, right? That was the distance that became, in essence, how far you could walk on the Sabbath without working. That was considered basically, that was not work to go to, basically to get to know each other, to be part of to find families and hang out and to connect. Now, Judah was given the place of honor. They were in the east, which is the direction where where the sun is filled with light. And I don't know if you remember, but Judah's come a long way since, not that he's still alive, but Judah, the father of Judah, right? Judah himself was, he had a rough run there for a while. After Joseph was taken and sold into slavery, you remember he was the one who, anyways, he see, now I'm going to start telling all these stories again. We already told them. Go to the past episodes. But in short, Judah tried to force his father to sleep with Leah after Rachel died, Leah was Judah's mom. And that became a point of contention. And then he's the one who suggested that Joseph be tossed into the well. And he's like, we'll let God decide what's going to happen to him. But his intent was to go back and rescue him and bring him back to his father in order to restore his good standing with his father. So Judah had that going on. And when that didn't happen, he ended up leaving. And there was this whole crazy story in the book of Genesis, like kind of in the middle of the story of Joseph. You have the story of Judah, but literally is 20 years long, where he was involved with a temple prostitute that was actually his daughter-in-law, who he wouldn't allow to marry his youngest son because he didn't like her. And it just, oh man, that boy was messed up. He made some bad choices. Anyways, Judah has been restored to the place where light first fills the earth, and that's a very symbolic and beautiful thing. So that pretty much takes care of chapter 3. Look at us just cruising right along here. And yes, there are many ways to break this down. I had my daughter going to a she'd already been to a ministry school, but her church is doing a school as well. Her pastor is doing a school. A lot of pastors do that, and she was telling me all the symbolisms that come from Moses' rod and how important it is. And I thought, man, that's really cool. That's really, I remember learning very similar things when I was in Bible school and the ministry schools I went to. And it is symbolisms are really cool. And you can go through where everybody was parked and why they were there and what it meant. And have fun with it. Like it's not wrong to know that stuff. I think where we go wrong is when that's the only stuff we notice. We don't notice the goodness of God. So in chapter 3, the counting of the clans, right? This is the account of the family of Aaron and Moses at the time that the Lord spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai. So again, this was done. This book, of course, is written from memory by Moses. He's not writing it like every day as a journal. So now we get an account that was done previously at a different time. They were brothers, right? Moses and Aaron. So technically Moses' sons were Levites. And they seem to be counted as Aaron's sons, or at least brought alongside of Aaron in such a way that Moses was the leader of the nation and the mediator between God and the nation. And Aaron was in charge of all the Levites. And at some level, they were all brought before Aaron and in essence counted as his. Now, granted, they're not like 12 years old, right? These guys are probably in their, well, they're between 20 and 60 if they're being counted. So they're older guys. Like, they know what's going on. They are not like, oh no, dad's abandoning us. We're orphans. They're fine. Everybody's good. Oh, anyways, I want to jump to verse 9. It says, give the Levites to Aaron and his sons. They are the Israelites who are to be given wholly to him. Appoint Aaron and his sons to serve as priests. Anyone else who approaches the sanctuary is to be put to death. Again, that phrase means God has the option to do what he wants. Given wholly means this: the nation will be responsible to provide for the Levites. They are to care for the nation's spirituality. The nation will care for them physically. They perform all the ceremonies. They teach every day amongst the tribes and the families and the nation. They tore down and set up the tabernacle whenever it had to be moved. All of this was part of being a Levite. And the nation, in essence, had to take on that role of saying, all right, then we will take care of them. They won't necessarily own anything, even though they will have flocks that will be dedicated to the Lord that they'll be caring for, but they care for them because they're dedicated to the Lord, and they will never be sacrificed. So they had them to use, but it's different. They didn't obtain money for them. There was no personal gain from this. Remember, they weren't allowed to eat food that was more than 2 days old because the Lord's like, you need to trust me that the food will keep coming. So the Levites were very unique. And I know that there are some ministries, churches, organizations, denominations that believe the same thing, that the people of the church needed to completely provide everything for the pastor. And then there's others who take a very business approach and they say the pastor needs to be provided for so that when they retire, they still can live without having to depend on the church. And so they give them, they pay them a salary. They sometimes they give them enough money so the pastor can buy their house. Sometimes they buy the house for the pastor and gift it to them. Like, there's all kinds of ways to work the taxes and the gifts and the tax exemptions and all that sort of thing. But this is where that concept kind of comes from, where the Levites were set apart and it was up to the nation to care for them. And then the Levites had to take on the role of the spiritual temperature and growth of the nation, which is no small task and something that they all took very seriously. And I have little doubt that it also took up a ton of their time. Both in study and in conversation and in travel all around the nation all the time, back and forth from this place to another. I'm going to slide down. Now I'm scrolling up my phone. We are going, oh yeah, 46 to 51. To redeem the 273 firstborn Israelites who exceed the number of Levites, collect 5 shekels, each one according to the sanctuary shekel, which weighs 20 gerahs. Give the money for the redemption of the additional Israelites to Aaron and his sons. So Moses collected the redemption money from those who exceeded the number of redeemed by the Levites. From firstborn of the Israelites, he collected silver weighing 1,365 shekels. According to the sanctuary shekel, Moses gave the redemption money to Aaron and his sons, and he was commanded as he was commanded by the Lord. So what's going on here? Well, they needed more people to do the teaching. And so rather than all the Levites teaching all the families, 273 firstborn of the families were dedicated by the nation to be redeemed for the nation, and they paid for them. They were paid, in essence, to be servants of the nation, to be part of the spiritual development of the nation, to work on the behalf, on their behalf before God. It's a again, it's a fascinating concept as the Lord is giving them principles to bring the nation together as a family. He's saying we're all going to be in this together. And even though the Levites are set apart, so are over, almost 300 of your firstborn sons are now being dedicated. They're being bought by the nation and dedicated to the nation. It's interesting as well. A lot of people believe that the price given for this dedication was the price that the Midianites, the spice traders, paid for Joseph. And that's how they set the price. I don't know that to be true. I just thought it was a fascinating thing. A fascinating thing. So their job was to work on behalf of the nation before God and work on behalf of God before the nation, and to be an assistant, assist the Levites in all that they had to do. Maybe they helped them tear down their personal tents, obviously not the tabernacle. So then we get to chapter 4. We're almost done here. I know we're going to roll through these. But this is like the administration and the organization of the system. Everybody had a job. Everybody. Verse 5, when the camp is to move, Aaron and his sons are to go and take down the shielding. They are to do this. They are to do that. This stuff is organized. I'm going to skip down to verse 19. It's spelled out. They're not doing this trial and error. Verse 19, so that they may live and not die when they come near to the most holy things. For them, Aaron and his sons are to go into the sanctuary and assign to each man his work and what he is to carry. But the Kohathites must not go in and look on the holy things, even for a moment, or they will die. So the idea of dying here is not a transactionary death. It's not like if you do this, God will kill you. It was more the idea that you just don't do this. It's really important that only the Levites handle the most holy of things. You keep each element moving up and down. There were, just so you know, right? There were more tables than just the table of showbread. There was a lot of things to move and set up in the tabernacle. Once the tent went up, then you had to set up all of the things inside the tents. The Holy of Holies had to be set up. Somebody had to carry the ark in there, the curtain, then the glory of the Lord would fall. Like it was, you had to keep things moving. You had to keep it very specific. And the Lord's like, listen, don't let anybody but the Levites do this. And like I said, there were more tables. I don't know why, but oftentimes when you see a breakdown of the tabernacle, you see just the table for the showbread and the table for the menorah, and then the altar. Well, you had to have tables all over the place. You had tables for the slaughtering of these animals. You had to have tables for the cutting of the meat, because some of the meat you burned whole. Some of the animals you burned whole. Some you just burned the fat from. Some you had to remove the intestines before. You go back and read it. I know I didn't cover all these details, but there were a lot of them. So there were tables and knives and places to collect blood. And remember, we have to have the additional fire that keeps the altar fire hot. So people had to be close enough to transport that. All of that's happening inside the tented area, the walled area of the tabernacle. It was a very active place, and it could be easy for someone to kind of get caught up in that and say, hey, let me give you a hand, Levite. And the Lord's like, please don't do that. Let the Levites do it all. So the census gave real numbers for the assignments and for everything to be distributed. And in verse, I just want to hit this, verse 23, verse 22, take a census also of the Gershonites by their families and clans, count them all, the men from 30 to 50 years of age who come to serve in the work of the tent of meeting. This is the service of the Gershonites, clans that in the carrying out of their work. They are to carry the curtains of the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, its covering and its outers. And then he goes on. Yeah, it just keeps going. Sorry. It goes on and on. But part of the verse 23 carries with it the idea of music was a part of their responsibility. So evidently, some believe that when the tent of meeting was going on, there was music going on. And when things were set up, there was music going on. So that there was a rhythm, almost like a song. And we hear that in our history of workers that would, now unfortunately, sometimes they were prison workers, sometimes they are slaves, where they had songs that they would kind of chant, kind of sing, that would kind of give them a rhythm of doing their work to kind of make the time go quickly and keep you focused. And that is alluded to in the nuances of the writings there in verse 23. All right, you want more details? You can jump in there, but you can imagine with all of this going on, all the families, everybody getting their assignments, like you start to get excited, like the unity of the family, the unity of the tribe would be coming together. People would be looking around going, man, I got a job. I'm going to be part of this. I'm part of a nation. I'm not just me doing something. Now, I'm sure there were some who were like, this is just one form of slavery from another. We're just slaves, got to do what we're told. That's what we're trying to work people out of, that slave mentality. Because if you're in love, if you're in relationship, if you're in a loving relationship, you will do work for that relationship. You will do work that represents that relationship, and you will do it not as a slave, but as a contributing, excited, relationally connected person. And that's what God wanted for his nation. So let's continue to connect and be a community together. I'll see you again next week on The Epic Narrative.
Don't go anywhere. We've got Bob Thoughts.
All right, everyone. Welcome to my thoughts today. I hope you enjoyed this one. We are now in the book of Numbers. Crazy but true. We are well on our way through the season, and I'm almost done writing the next one. So guess what? The epic narrative is going to continue. Yeah. Gonna be good. Joshua, Judges, and Ruth. And I know a lot of people have favorite stories from all of those books. And it's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be interesting because I'll tell you right now, there are some verses that to me have been purposely skipped over so that the quote heroes of the faith and the leaders of the land don't look too bad. They like sanctify these people's lives with what it's not like it's not in the Bible. You could read it yourself, but we don't, right? We spend our lives coloring pictures in Sunday school and listening to VeggieTales and sermons based on things that are there, but things that also omitted interesting characteristics about some of these heroes. Trust me, I'm having fun discovering this stuff. I think you're going to have fun too, but that's next season. This season, we're in the book of Numbers now, and I just think that slave mentality, again, going back to the beginning of the episode, that slave mentality is so permeated and so damaging to someone's belief system about themselves and about God. And so I'll continue to hammer it because I think so many Christians are still enslaved today. And they get really, honestly, some of them listen to things that I post, and I post reels and I post TikToks, at least back in the day. But, I post stuff. I do Bob Thoughts, as you know. And I say things, and some people listen to them, and it really rattles their belief system because they are comfortable They're comfortable. That's all. And I understand that. There is a comfort in saying, all right, I know what I need to know to get me to heaven. And now I just stick with it and I don't change it. And I don't just don't introduce any other option into my brain. And then we do. And they either fight it, or I believe in most cases, so far anyways, those that I've run into, most cases they're at least willing to consider it. That's all I can ask. I don't claim to have it down. Somebody asked me the other day, so are you right? No, I don't. I have no idea. I believe so, but I'm not going to tell somebody else they have to believe this way in order to be right. That's not the journey. That's not the journey. My goal is for people to pursue Jesus and then filter scripture through him. And that's what we do here. Little follow-up on being offended. Some people really enjoyed that thought of just giving up, just give up being offended. You'll get to a point where when somebody says something offensive, you actually can understand their perspective so fast that you don't even get offended. Like okay, so I'll give you an example. The other day, I was talking to a coworker who, was leaving, and they were like, when we first got here, and they named another coworker who is still here with me, they told us that you were a pedophile and to avoid you at all costs. And I thought, wow, I totally understand how he could think that, because here I am, a pastor. I've been, I sold everything. I had not theoretically, I know this for certain. I had a great salary and a beautiful home. And I gave that up to hit the road in an RV. And I stay fairly quiet. Nobody seems to know, whatever. And then you look at the current events of pastors that, my goodness, big names, right? We've gone through them before. We got big names going down for sexual harassment, sexual abuse, leadership abuse, and then you have hundreds of little ones that are going down. Little pastors, so to speak, small churches where they have manipulated and abused, children because they were their only spiritual leader. And they're horrible people, and they need to be imprisoned. If not, I don't know what else, but they at least need to be imprisoned. And I thought, of course he would think that. I mean, my scenario fits it. To tell him, well, I believe God called me onto the road. I believe God has something better for me somewhere, and it's just taking a long time for us to find it. We don't know. I won't bore you with the details because you guys already know a lot of them. But there I am, a perfect picture of what a pedophile preacher would look like. Sell everything, hit the road, disappear from that entire culture. So that was my first thought was, wow, I can see why he would say that. The people who told me completely thought that I would be offended and that I would be, in essence, become angry, and it would cause this issue between this coworker and I, because the other people are gone. But it hasn't, because I'm not offended by it. I do understand why he would see that, and why obviously I wouldn't walk around telling everybody, yeah, listen, I'm a pedophile, so I lost my job. It's not what happened. But it sure could look that way. It's a scenario that fits. It's a filter that fits. And he put it on me. And it does help me understand why many people, when we first arrived, didn't want to connect with us. Like that was hard for us to understand. We spent over a month where, we were never invited out after work where most people were. And it took a long time for us to really make inroads and make friends. And now at some level, it's like, yeah, no, I understand that too. So what that person said to me in an attempt to cause offense and cause division, for me, it brought understanding and kind of made me feel sympathetic and empathetic because of the state of so many churches and so many people who have been hurt by so many pastors. And I know I've alluded to one that I know of that I personally worked for, and then I've now I know that there's at least 2, if not 3 instances in which, things were buried, payments were made so that trials didn't take place, that sort of thing, because the pastor was trying to, quote, protect his legacy. He had a moral downfalling or whatever. So it's a fascinating thing when you give up being offended, how quickly that allows you then to enter into understanding. And it does, obviously it doesn't cause division now. It causes understanding. And if I wanted to, I could speak to him, because I'm not going to come to him defensive or angry or arrogant. I could go to him and just say, so, my friend, help me understand, why would this person say that you said this? Did you? And is it because I would give them the scenario so that, because obviously that could be a very awkward conversation and I wouldn't want to cause him to be upset. So I sincerely doubt I'll have the conversation. I don't need to have the conversation, but I could if I wanted to. Anyways, continue to work on not being offended. Continue to develop your ability to see people as God sees them, and when you feel like being offended, look for opportunities to be understanding instead. All right, gotta go. Love you guys. Thanks for coming by.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to this podcast on any platform you use. You can also reach out to Bob for questions or booking at thebobswitzer.com or email him at thebobswitzer@gmail.com. See you next week, guys.